If you keep putting out bills that are awful, eventually one of them is going to stick. When it sticks, it's going to be challenged, which means it's going to go to appeal. And it's go to the appeals court. It's going to go through that for a while. And then it's going to be taken to the Supreme Court. Because a conservative-run Supreme Court is most likely going to rule in favor of parents. So I'm wondering if they're doing the same tactic they did with Roe v. Wade, where they just keep nickeling and diming it to see what they can get away with until eventually it breaks. That's what they did for 30 years with Roe v. Wade. I have no doubt that this is what they're trying to do this way. Process of making our way through the large pile of news that we were really not able to get to in the last 3 months. Get to why that happened in another segment, but for now, I kind of wanted to talk about this. The Missouri bill would make teachers register as sex offenders if found supporting transgender students who socially transition. This is from 6 days ago on CNN. I believe the LGBT Nation one came out on the 1st. The proposed law in Missouri would charge teachers and counselors with a felony and require them to register as sex offenders if they are found guilty of supporting transgender students who are socially transitioning. Missouri State Representative Jamie Gregg, sounds like he's some sort of caveman. Well, I guess he's Republican, so fair. A Republican introduced House Bill 2885 last week. If passed and signed into law, the legislation would criminalize the act of contributing to social transition for anyone acting in an official capacity at school, including providing informational or material support. The proposed bill joins a string of anti-LGBTQ measures that have been filed in states across the U.S. and comes amidst a growing parental rights movement that seeks to empower parents to decide what can be taught in the classrooms about gender, sexuality, and race. So I want to be very clear about something. Our position on this is pretty set, and that is parents do not get to have a say in that. Or if they do, they are one part of it. I don't know that parent's education. I don't know that parent's values. I don't know that parent's background. They do not get to actually decide the curriculum because it is too easy for them to have an agenda. That's not to say that people in the government can't have an agenda, but at least there's a number of, cooks in the kitchen that can make sure there's at least some standards. As someone said in chat, parents' right to what? Fill in the goose meme. Because this is the thing. As far as I'm concerned, if your kid is going to school, there are things that you're going to need your kid to know that you can't provide. And if that includes the understanding that gay and trans people exist, sorry. Better jump in at any point, by the way.
Oh, no, I'm just on this because we get some really weird results where, people will make it through the entire educational system with 0 sex education. It's a whole mess of, as a society, we still need people about their bodies and stuff, but that's not what these groups ever really care about.
Numerous medical associations, including the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, have said gender-affirming care like social transitioning is clinically appropriate for children and adults. To be clear, this is the short list. The list is massive. If you actually can find the whole list of people that are supportive of transition, this is just a thing. Only a few institutions are against transition, and they are almost always right-wing think tanks paying for supposed medical expertise from charlatans who don't care about ethics because they want to cash a check. The bill defines social transitioning as the process by which a person adopts a name, pronouns, and gender expression, such as clothing or haircut, that matches the individual's gender identity and not the gender assumed by the individual's sex at birth. If you're a man with long hair, is that technically a gender signifier, right?
Or if you're a girl who just wants to play football or on the rugby team, actually do sports, would that include you over here?
In Missouri, a person charged with a Class E felony could face a maximum of 4 years in prison. A Tier 1 sex offender could also remain on the sex offender registry for up to 15 years, according to another Missouri statute. To be 100% clear, you do this destroys that person's career. I don't care if they're a school counselor. I don't care if they're a teacher.
Oh no, you can't be doing any of your similar even positions. Any training that you had in anything revolving around kids is now gone. Like, this fucks you up. And various states have their version of this. We've covered it in other years. There's all sorts of stupid ways to get people on here. This will absolutely do damage to anyone wanting to do anything in Missouri.
I don't even know how they get therapists. They might tell the kid to stay closeted while affirming the kid. This possibly destroys doctor-patient confidentiality. 100% cherry anarchist.
Mhm.
Because one of the problems with this is you are essentially forcing a person to choose between their license and their ability to practice. And the issue with this is that every time you re-up your license, they ask you, have you been convicted of any felonies? Because this is a felony, this would take away your ability to work. So basically, you're stopping this. And again, depending on what they mean by counselors, right? They may in fact mean counselors in the grand sense, like therapists, versus just school counselors. CNN has reached out to Greg for comment. In an interview with CNN affiliate KY3, Greg said the goal of the bill is to put the social learning development of our children back in the hands of parents. I don't know. No. There's no requirement to be a parent other than the ability to breed, and you don't even have to be good at it. Could you imagine how fucked the human race would be if you had to be good at sex to procreate? There'd be none of us left. After all the guys I've seen who are terrible at it. It's unclear if Greg's bill would be taken up in the state house, and it has not been scheduled for a hearing. Fair enough. Hateful and malicious. LGBTQ advocates and Missourians have criticized the bill, including Greg's brother, during a news conference Thursday. Charles Gregg Jr., a retired and disabled veteran who lives in Springfield, Missouri, said he was shocked by the bill his younger brother authored. The measure took his breath away. This bill removes valuable support that is important for children. It needlessly targets teachers in addition to attacking those that they don't agree with. It also attacks anyone who expresses compassion or tolerance or seeks to silence them. I believe it's intended to remove them from future conversation, Greg Jr. said. Robert Fisher, communications director for Promo, an LGBTQ plus policy and advocacy organization in Missouri, they got their work cut out for them, that organized Thursday's presser, said students and teachers have contacted the group to express concern about how the bill could impact educators. One of the ways this is going to impact them is it's going to cause them to most likely have to deal with the possibility of losing their teaching certificate, or in the case of school counselors, losing their school counselor certificate or license, depending on the state. And again, if the language is just as vague as Annie is saying in chat, then by definition, it means that counselor could very well mean therapist, even if that wasn't the intention of the law, right?
It basically says, in any like official capacity, like, is that including bus drivers and security guards and secretaries? Because those people get to know students too. A lot of times.
And what are we defining as support? Like if I call someone by their chosen name, and then this law goes into effect, you're asking me to then misgender this kid, to dead name them? Yeah, bully this child or lose your license. That's literally what this is. GLSEN, an organization that aims to create safe and inclusive school environments for LGBTQ plus youth, also criticized the bill. Melanie Willingham and Yeager, executive director of GLSEN, said the bill is deeply transphobic. Well, duh. While this egregious bill is expected to die in committee hearings, it is increasingly alarming to watch extremist state legislators peddle anti-trans hate and continue introducing discriminatory policies. So can I tell you my fear about these bills? My fear about these bills is that if you keep putting out, excuse me, if you keep putting out bills that are awful, eventually one of them is going to stick. When it sticks, it's going to be challenged, which means it's going to go to appeal. And it's go to the appeals court. It's going to go through that for a while. And then it's going to be taken to the Supreme Court, because a conservative-run Supreme Court is most likely going to rule in favor of parents. So I'm wondering if they're doing the same tactic they did with Roe v. Wade, where they just keep nickeling and diming it to see what they can get away with until eventually it breaks. That's what they did for 30 years with Roe v. Wade. I have no doubt that this is what they're trying to do this way.
having to keep track of all this stuff, having to constantly fight all of this stuff keeps people tired and it keeps using resources.
Yep.
It's a more of attrition kind of deal. I want to be clear too, like Missouri is absolutely like attempting to fuck over teachers, and I wouldn't be surprised if they started dealing with more of a teacher shortage because no one in their right mind wants even like to be in an environment where any possible thing could get you on the sex offender registry. Keep in mind that when you register, you cannot live within so many miles of like a school. Your address is published. You are limited in where you can go. Like, there's a whole lot of stuff that really fucks you over being on that list. And I can't imagine anyone going, like, in teaching school right now, going, yeah, let's go to Missouri. No, this looks like a hell state.
Yeah. What do we have to say about this? Not a whole lot. I mean, the reality is that as many people have said in chat, harm is the point. Cruelty is the point. If these kids have no support, it saves them the work of having to create camps. I'm sorry, but that's my honest opinion. Because trans people are a unique population, and one of the ways that we can be gotten rid of is by lack of support and by alienating us through systemic means such as this. Then what happens is that kid now has no supports, no care, and all it takes is that kid to have a bad enough situation and no adults around them to support them, including the parents. And what happens is that kid ends up hurting themselves. One thing they bring up here that we're probably not going to cover tonight, but it's something to bring up later is last month, Next Benedict, a non-binary high school student in Oklahoma, died a day after they told their family they were involved in a fight at school. Civil rights groups and advocates have blamed a heightened and hostile climate against LGBTQ plus communities for contributing to Benedict's death. So I haven't looked at the most up-to-date data on this. What I will say is that based on my understanding of this kid's situation, 100%. Like, at very least, this atmosphere contributed to why this kid ended up dying. I saw something today that said that the coroner ruled it as a suicide. I don't know if that's true. I would need to double check. But it is, X uses he, him. Thank you. He most likely committed suicide, according to that. But again, based on what I know about the story already, I don't know if I buy that. The point here is again, we have to keep fighting these bills as best we can, keep calling them out. This is going to keep happening. Watch other groups too. This is where we really do need to start fomenting solidarity with other marginalized groups, because there's other groups that are part of, I would say, sort of this overall collective of sort of gender, relationship, sexuality that are all going to be on the chopping block. We know for a fact that they want to screw with gay marriage. They're already working towards that end. I saw something from Evie Levine. She had a really outstanding point about the fact that watch out because they're going to start going after poly people as well. I'm going to say really quickly, just start creating connections between these groups. You need to start watching all of this. And that's, and again, any attempt by any of these groups to throw anyone else part of this under the bus should be immediately looked at as a suspect.
So here's some tips for getting involved or getting connected with some of these groups. Because we say that, but what does that actually mean? You can do things like, hey, you see somebody's table at an event, go talk to them. Go find out who they are. Get to know any of your local organizations. If there's a local group that does advocacy, go talk to them. See if they have any events coming up. Go to their events. Let's say you're in, maybe get involved with your city's harvest festival or art festival or something. See if you can help volunteer and get a booth somewhere. See if you can suggest, hey, let's get this group having a booth here, right? Because that way, like, these groups are more and more in the community. They're more and more able to reach people. These are also a lot of the groups that are coordinating activism. And that's the big thing, is making sure that we are using people who have experience and expertise in this and who are doing this, and actually accomplishing stuff. And if there's groups of like maybe you're not familiar with, go talk to them too, right? Like these are all really good ways to just get a little bit more involved and, start kind of making a move towards, okay, well, what can I as an individual do for the
Mhm. Thank you for the correct pronunciation. It's lupine, as in like the term for one of the terms for werewolves in Werewolf the Apocalypse. Um, so I guess the last thing I would say is just please, please be aware they're going to keep pushing this line. And whether this is we need to advocate for more members on the Supreme Court, whether this means that we need to push for some sort of change in the law that would allow the Supreme Court to be held to account for their activities. I don't know, but there's got to be something at the state level, and there's got to be something at the federal level. There's got to be some way we deal with this stuff. Obviously, if the Equality Act, yeah, the Equality Act that Biden was pushing actually got made law, that would have been great. But sadly, no.
hmm Well, that's the other thing. Keep an eye on elections. Keep an eye on who's running in your county, or your entire district. And I'm not saying that voting is the only thing that you do, but please do vote. Keep an eye on that stuff. Keep an eye on who, um, your legislators are.
And so, with that said,
hmm
pretty much we'll see you guys in the next one. All
Yeah.
right.